Every morning when the alarm would go off and I'd want to snooze, I thought to myself, if I don't get my ass out of bed and work on this damn chapter, I don't know what I'm going to say to Kelton on Friday. So I think it was a combination of knowing that I wanted to face you and tell you I did what I said I would do that got me out of bed. But now I don't know what to do next. So that's why I'm like, I did it. It feels very anticlimactic because I don't know what I'm gonna do afterwards.
Well, I have ideas for you.
I'm Krisserin Canary.
And I'm Kelton Wright.
Follow our quest to publish our first novels
From first drafts to query letters
through inevitable rejection
and hopefully eventual success.
from California.
Colorado. This is Pen Pals.
The dog's in the room. Hold on a second, because she's inevitably gonna bark and want to leave. Lynne, here. All right, now I'm ready. Oh yeah.
Hi, Krisserin.
Hi Kelton. Happy Friday. Happy Pen Pals Day.
Happy Pen Pals Day. I had a good week, did you?
Yeah, I had a good week.
That
did.
sounds reassuring.
So my goals for last week were to finish editing the book and to write that letter. And I did all of those things. And I will say it's in large part because of you. The girls it's spring break, which means I don't have to get up at 5 a.m. to get them ready for school and write. So I've been getting up a little bit later. And it dawned on me this week that if I finish the book, I don't have to get up early anymore because I don't have something that I'm actively working on. But every morning when the alarm would go off and I'd want to snooze, I thought to myself, if I don't get my ass out of bed and work on this damn chapter, I don't know what I'm going to say to Kelton on Friday. So I think it was a combination of knowing that I wanted to face you and tell you I did what I said I would do that got me out of bed. But now I don't know what to do next. So that's why I'm like, I did it. It feels very anticlimactic because I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards.
Well, I have ideas for you. I do want to hear a little bit about writing the letter to your ideal reader. How did that feel?
So I didn't necessarily, I mean, it didn't turn out the way I had envisioned it was going to turn out. And of course, I just pantsed it. I didn't plan it. I
Good.
sat down and I thought about, so not so much a letter to the reader, but if I were to write a letter at the end of the book that people would read to understand kind of the origin of the story and how I came about it, I wrote that. And it ended up being a letter that was a history of the women who made me. So I wrote about my grandmothers, Carmen and Ruth, and the things that I knew about them or know about them and the things that I'd heard about them. You know, my grandmother, Carmen, I lived with her for a large part of my life, and she was my Filipino grandmother, had a huge impact on me. And my other grandmother, Ruth, passed away when I was 2. So I don't know a ton about her, but I still have the baby blanket that she made for me. It was always a symbol of love from a person that I didn't get to grow up with. There's a lot of family lore on both sides, and really the origin of this book was someone who is finding their way and realizing that you don't have to do it alone. You know, I think we go out into the world after we become adults and we're like, I'm not going to listen to what my parents have to say. I know better. You just go out and you face the world and think that you're going to figure it out all on your own. But the things that you learn from your family, they can be blessings and curses. They can be the things that you have to fight through to figure out how to survive and overcome. But then they can also be the blessing of like, they survived it, you know, even though there was something that might have held them back or encumbered them, they also survived it. So the solution is there alongside the problem. So that was kind of what I wrote about, and it felt good. I got teary at the end. I was like,
I think you know why I assigned that, but in case the listeners don't, it was obviously to manipulate you into writing a rough draft of a query letter for this book. I know your face. You're like, you son of a bitch. But I just think that I knew that a letter like that, your soul would pour into it. And now you just have to it's poured into like a teacup, and now you have to pour it into like a traveler's mug so it can go out into the world. But it's like that feeling. I knew a letter, however it came across, would evoke that, and it sounds amazing. It sounds like something that kind of would be cool if you included at the end of the book.
Yeah, I think so. I think,
It's almost like an extended acknowledgement. It's my favorite part of a book.
yeah, I do love an acknowledgement. And I do love an acknowledgement that is more than just like, let me thank all the people who helped me publish this book, that has a little bit more about the story and why it was important for the author to write
Yeah.
it. It feels intimate, and it's nice when you've spent so much time with a story that someone has poured blood, sweat, and tears into, to hear about why they wrote it. And it's almost like a softer goodbye after you finish a novel and you're kind of sad that it's over, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I did not write my acknowledgments this week, but I did write 2,000 words.
I know. So Kelton posted this on social media, so if you follow her, you probably saw it. But I was cheering, actually audibly cheering for you when I saw those posts. So tell me about your writing week. You hit your goal. How did you do it?
I hit my goal. I front loaded my client work, which was easy to do because I have reduced client load for the next couple of weeks. Hire me, haha. But so I did most of what I needed to do Monday and Tuesday, which left me Wednesday and Thursday to do a bunch of writing. And because Ben and I have allocated days for who has the child when, that means I even if I don't have paid work, Wednesday and Thursday are still mine to use as I please. And so I use them both for the novel, which was really wonderful to have just like chunks of time to dedicate to them. I wish that meant that there was more than 2,000 words, but I also got rid of another 2,000 words. It's tough when you're watching your overall word count because you're like, oh, we're really going nowhere, aren't we? But there were scenes that I was like, oh, this doesn't happen. These characters aren't even in this book. And so they're just moved out of the manuscript section into like my kind of compost pile to reference later if I want to. But I still think it's an accomplishment in writing a novel to have the clarity to be like, oh, that's not part of it. So I added 2,000, I subtracted 2,000, but I added a good 2,000. They're fun to write. I felt like I was there. I learned a little about my main character. And I made a reel on Instagram, kind of like announcing the synopsis, if you will, and it performed very poorly. I fucking hate Instagram so much, but I know that I'm like still buried under the weight of an algorithm that has me permanently shadow banned. So whatever. It felt good to just like be honest about what I was doing and like have the few people who do see what I'm up to appreciate it.
Well, a couple thoughts on that. First of all, I loved the reel. I saw it and I was like, fuck yeah. Maybe you need to move to TikTok and figure out a way to make that platform work for you, because I feel like you can dig yourself out of the hole on a new platform, and your content is something that people can resonate with. So I feel like it's probably an avenue for you,
Yeah. I think that's actually a smart goal for me to move over to TikTok. The book talk girlies are there. The people who like the kind of thing I'm writing are there.
Mm-hmm.
And that algorithm doesn't hate me yet.
Well, and so the other thing that I was going to say, because I do notice writers doing this, where they will start seeding their book and start talking about it publicly. And even when I was at EWP and interviewed some of the authors there, I interviewed one gentleman, Omari Richards, and he was saying that he would hype up his book while he was writing it and post every milestone that he had. Like, I finished my first draft, I finished my second draft, because you're building an audience and there's anticipation and all of that. And I've never considered doing that in my life. Like, it's for me, I'm like, I'm hiding over here. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. I'm working on something right now.
I mean, it's so true of writers, because I think about other media. Obviously, this is exactly what they do for TV and for movies, where it's like they announce the project, they announce the cast. There's like behind the scenes shots. It's a little different because you are often following a component, whether it's a screenwriter, a producer, a director, actors and actresses. And there's elements that are already drawing you in. Often there's IP, but you can use things familiar to that to promote a book too. So I've seen people do it where they're like, this is the color palette of the book. This is the playlist I'm listening to while writing the book. If you loved these books, you will love my book. So maybe I'll take that approach, because if people are already like, I want it, that's a good way to get the people who need to want it to want it.
Yeah. And there are people who are doing that are talking about their book online and building an audience. For me, I always thought, I mean, when I think about the authors that are currently doing that, they're established authors. So they're saying like, I'm on the second draft of the second book of the series that you guys are all waiting for. People who are actually waiting for those books, where I feel like for me, people who are like, who are you and why should I care? You have
Totally.
So I think that it all goes back to me being just a little like shy baby about social media, but I think you would do a great job of moving your content over there and promoting it, because you have a built-in audience of people who love your writing already because of your Substack and would, I'm sure, devour your book.
Well, this is the new experiment for me then.
TikTok. TikTok. Speaking of audience, we have some questions that we had meant to answer before, but I figured we could take some time to do them now. The first question is from a listener called Big Block Letters, and they ask, what motivates you, especially when you are exhausted, which we both quite exhausted these days. One motivation is money, but what other inner feelings do you have to keep writing? Kelton.
I mean, it's just the first thing my brain said was future money. It's tough. In terms of like inner feelings to keep writing, I don't know. This is a really challenging question for me. I don't know that I've ever investigated it that deeply in myself. Like writing is just what I do. It's like even the way I'm saying that out loud sounds so stupid, but I'm not like, if I wasn't writing, I would just boil over. Like I have to write. And sometimes that's in my journal. Shout out to my Google Docs journal, which is over 300,000 words. It takes a minute to load. But I feel like I have to. I don't know that I need motivation. Now, do I need motivation to work on the right project? Yes. That, I think, is trickier to come by. How would you answer this? I feel stumped. It might be because I do have to tell you and everyone listening, I did not sleep last night. Last night was DEFCON 1 in our house. It was the worst night we've had in months. So I feel terrible.
Oh no. Well, you don't look terrible, if that helps. You don't look like you didn't.
Thank you. It's called concealer.
It's a really interesting question, and it kind of threw me a little bit too, because similar to you, I do feel like writing, I've talked about this, is integral to my mental health, and it's something that I really enjoy doing and I have fun doing. But the way that I interpreted this question is kind of the way that I have been managing my getting out of bed in the morning to actually do the work, right? So there is a moment every morning when my alarm goes off on my watch where I'm like, am I getting up or am I going back to bed? And there are moments when I am called to get out of bed, and that question is just a momentary glance, and I just get up and I do it, and I'm excited because I know what I'm working on, and I have a goal, or I have an accountability partner that I want to share my progress with, because you really, I mean, I don't want to belabor it, but you do help me get out of bed and do the writing, knowing that I'm going to have to face you and tell you what I worked on. I think in the past, I would have said there's like an ego element to it. I used to think that when I would envision what my writing was going to do for me or could do for me, I had this idea of like seeing my name in print and it being my identity and doing all of these things. And I've completely let go of that. Maybe not completely, let's be honest. But I've let go of that as a motivator for me, because it just seems so, I just know that it's not true. Like, I know that I'm not going to like feel this feeling of everything being what I wanted it to be if I do get my book published. And even the question of whether a book that I've written will ever be published is something that I've just kind of pushed off. And I know that all the people out there who like to manifest things are probably screaming right now. But like, I'm just like, if that happens, it happens. I'm not going to I'm not going to like, rest all my hopes and dreams on that. So, I think that for me, it is just like having a goal and having something that I know I want to accomplish is really important. So whether it is the things that we talk about each week and just knowing like
Yeah.
I want to reach that tree at the end of the lane and then I'll stop running for a while and I'll take a break. I think that that is what is motivating me right now. And it might
Hmm.
change. I think it has changed a lot over the years, but I think that for right now is just the sense of completion of a project. I'm a big closure person as much as I can be. And so I like to get things to a place as much as I can of closure because then once I'm done with it and I put it out in the world, there's no closure. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
as much as I can control it, I do. I try to.
I also think if you don't have a goal, if there's not like a project you are working on, then I can't suggest morning pages enough. I'm not a religious zealot about morning pages. I'm not like that's what you should do every morning for your whole life because I find them exhausting and tedious. But it does kind of clean the pipes out and it gets me moving. So if your motivation is like you don't know what to write and like you're tired of like going to the page and not having anything, then go to the page with the intention of not having anything.
I really wish I had like a spigot of inspiration the way that I envision you do. The idea of keeping a journal to me has always been, I've tried. It's so hard for me to sit down and put down my thoughts on page, like what's inside of my head in the current moment and the things that are making me anxious or the problems that I'm turning over. They're like in my head encased in concrete. It's really difficult for
Interesting.
me to sit down and actually write down from my POV what is going on in the world or what's going on in my head. So that letter that I wrote was very different than anything that I typically write.
Makes me
And
excited to read it.
ooh, I wonder about how you do it because you do it every week. It's just like, this is incredible. I wish I had, I don't even know how to like unlock that. You should teach a class.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to stop it. So that's a good question, though. I mean, I'll be thinking about that question. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I apologize in hindsight and in advance if my lack of sleep made me wildly inarticulate about it.
I think it was fine. I thought your answer was clear. Okay, the second question was a little bit more of a technical question.
Mm,
So we talked about Scrivener in our Pantsers versus Outliners episode, and I discussed how I use it really to organize my writing in lieu of an outline. So Scrivener has a corkboard feature. I don't know, are you familiar with this feature at all?
tell me more.
I was hoping you knew. The question was, why do you use physical post-its instead of Scrivener's corkboard feature?
I mean, I can tell you right now why I don't use any software for the post-its. And it's because I'm trying to have a different headspace.
Mm,
And I can't get that different headspace online
mhm.
or on a screen. It's like I need to have something I'm touching with my hands. And maybe it in terms of actually organizing the plot, it doesn't work any better. It's no different, but it's doing something different inside my brain.
Mhm.
Stepping away from the computer and touching things where I can't be typing and I can't be like working on it means that it's sitting back there, it's gestating. It's like I've opened the bottle of wine and I'm letting it breathe for a minute. We are decanting these concepts, okay? And on the board, it's I don't even know if I found it incredibly useful for moving scenes around, but it gave me like a reality to the project that I don't feel with a screen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When I do try and do some planning, or if I'm trying to take notes, they always have to be either on like I get colored
Hmm.
postcards, the 3x5 postcards, or I buy those really big pieces of paper that have the sticky back on them, and I will do like a story map where I'll draw the storylines and then have them connect and move around. And I do think that it
Yeah.
gets your story out of your head onto paper a little bit more. You can look at it in a different way. Because even when I look at my outline on Excel and I'm moving stuff around, it doesn't really do much for me except for make me look at it in a more like quantitative way. And it's not
Yeah.
exactly as helpful as I think
And
planning out a story.
yeah, and maybe using a Miro board or something like that, a software similar to that, is helpful to this person. It's just for me that I have to have that tactile separation from the screen in order to let it bloom. Plus, I had no idea that Scrivener had a cork board.
Scrivener's one of those technologies where it has all of these other features that I know exist, and I've kind of poked around at them a little bit, and I'm like, I'm just going to focus on the writing that I'm doing. But I have seen that there's ways that if you look at your book in certain views, they'll have the scenes look like postcards.
Yeah.
And you can move them around. But I don't know, there's something about also when you're writing out, like if I'm writing out a postcard, I'm not going to put like this is the description of the scene. I'm going to be like, fallout, whatever it is, like big fight, things like that are just more
Totally.
conceptual than
Yeah.
detailed,
That's a
I
really
guess.
good point. I don't think I had a post-it with more than 5 words on it.
Hmm.
And so it forces you to be concise, and in that way, you can really see the elements of your story, and how they lay out. And obviously, you can convert that to technology. You can do that with technology first, but it makes me feel like a writer in like 1990s rom-com by having physical papers around, you know?
That question was from Sarah Lavender Smith. And she also wrote a note about how she thinks about planning. So I'll just read it very quickly. Sarah said, I'm about halfway through drafting my memoir, which is structured around a double timeline. The main timeline follows an intense week of a journey in my present life, and the second timeline flashes back to earlier scenes and stages from childhood through early marriage. I found Courtney Mom's guidance on creating a 3-act storyline with a double track timeline helpful to get started. I made a 3-act rough outline on a big piece of paper with 3 columns, and then I blocked out the scenes in each act and color-coded them to indicate past scenes and present scenes. The story's structure and scene placement has evolved a lot since then, but doing this first simple outline helped me develop a macro view of the narrative arc. I wonder,
Cool.
are outlines more useful for nonfiction?
I think they're mandatory for nonfiction, but ooh, I guess in a way they have to be more valuable for nonfiction because people write whole ass fiction books without them. And I'm like, what? Show me a science writer writing a nonfiction book without an outline. Sarah's is interesting because it's memoir.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that it is nonfiction, but does she need an outline? It's her life. The outline's baked in.
That's true. It's very linear. But then she has these like layered flashbacks that it makes sense she's trying to figure out where to structure them. When she mentioned Courtney Mom's 3-act storyline, double timeline structure, it made me think of the fact that there are so many books out there that help with structure. Structure is something I struggle with. And I know I sent you Lisa Cron's Wired for Story, which
Yeah.
takes that screenwriter's view of how to hook people and engage people while you are structuring your novel and starting with the first chapter, the first sentence, and all of that. So I think that those are really great tools for people who are looking for guidance in that way. I think for me, when I'm starting out a project, the pantsing phase is like the joy phase for me before I have to think about any responsibility of making it make sense or have a plot in a way that makes sense. But I feel like for the people who out there who are outliners, these are great tools. So thank you again, Sarah,
Yeah.
for writing us that note.
I think that's probably a really smart method because similar to me, she has written extensively about her experiences and interviewed a bunch of people in ultra running. And she has great essays all the time. And so you have so much fodder to pull from that it helps to be like, how do I apply this to a structure? I'm also a big fan of Courtney Mom. She wrote the book Before and After the Book Deal. And I read the before part so far.
You're holding on to that after part like a dessert,
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
it out from the library and I was like, once I get a book deal, I'll buy this book. I do subscribe to Courtney Mom's Substack, so I'm a patron of her arts.
Thank you to our listeners who wrote in and gave us some feedback on how they do things and your questions. We love them. Keep sending them. Today, however, we're talking about the competition for ideas and thinking about where your book lives on the bookshelf in the store. So I've talked about this a little bit. Kelton, have you ever gone into a Barnes and Noble and looked at where your book would be and look at all the other books that would be alongside and think about how does my book live in this universe that already exists?
Krisserin, I think you know that I am enormously full of myself. When I walk into Barnes and Noble, I'm like, it's right there. It's the first table. Where else would it be?
Yes,
It's in
you
the
said that.
windows. But yeah, I have done that when I've thought about like what different genres I'm interested in and where they're sitting within the marketplace when I thought that. Now when you walk into a Barnes and Noble, the first tables are like high fantasy and romance. And I have at times in my life pursued both of those. And so it was easy to be like, oh, I would kind of fit in here. I haven't thought about the genre of my book. And so I actually had to do a fair amount of Googling yesterday because I was like, I actually have no idea what genre my book is in. And wow, there are a lot of genres.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Wait till you have to query and there's like a drop down, like, what's your genre? And it's like, here are all the things.
It's absolutely crazy. So I sent to Krisserin the other day a Substack called Pitch Your Novel by Karen Gillespie, where she was looking at Query Tracker and seeing by the numbers what was being selected the most. And out of 150 agent offers, 55 of them were a type of romance. That's a third. Does anyone in your book have a romance? Is this what we should be doing?
Every story is a love story, Kelton.
Oh, God.
I find that to be somewhat true. But women are readers, and we're the people who are buying books and checking them out from the library. So it does not surprise me. It is a highly marketable genre, whether it's romance or romantasy or YA romance or whatever it may be. When we're talking about the people who are consuming books, like these people on Book Talk who are reading, like me, over 100 books a year, they're not reading War and Peace and then the brothers Dostoevsky and then Anna Karenina. They're reading Akatar and Fourth Wing and Penelope Douglas and all of those writers, they're just, and I've gone through periods of that too, which is why I said that everyone has a Penelope Douglas phase, especially coming out of the pandemic. I read a ton of romance because it's fun and it's easy to consume and it makes me want to be intimate with my husband more often. So
I love that. I went on a little journey this morning of just Googling what genre some of my past, most memorable reads have been, just to see, where they fit in. Because when I looked at that Karen Gillespie's list and she was qualifying what everything was, it was like, I genuinely don't yet know the difference between literary, upmarket, book club, contemporary. There was another one in there that I was like, oh, what is that? Women's fiction. This is all of these things to me. I'm a little lost in the dark, but it makes sense. I am more familiar with the genres that I spend more time with. High fantasy, low fantasy, dark fantasy, sci-fi, horror. I think as I was looking for where my book fits into any of these, I was like, is my book American Gothic?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I would say so.
I know. I mean,
because I told you should read Mexican Gothic, the book by Sylvan.
Yes, you did.
Marina Garcia. It's like Jane Eyre meets, I don't know, insert horror novel here. It's a speculative Jane Eyre. And so I would say that yours kind of fits that bill. Could be.
Yeah, if I'm reading about American Gothic, it delves into themes of historical sins, mental illness, destiny, and the nature of evil, particularly within the context of American experiences, which makes my book sound really serious, but my book aligns perfectly with that, which I find odd.
Well, I do feel like when I think about American Gothic, I think of we're talking about evil and the sins in the past and like how those manifest, there is a element of magic in that, right? If you believe in that, if you believe that the land that you're on and the things that you inherit from your family, there's this like element of predestiny in them, then you are thinking that there is like some magic that exists. So I feel like it does describe your novel, but you could also throw in like a speculative American Gothic in there, just to, if you wanted to
Yeah.
color it a
Yeah,
little
I
bit
mean, it's like
more.
American Gothic dark fantasy and like a slice of romance.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh, I love it. When
Pitched.
you were describing American Gothic, I was like, this is Kelton. Minus the evil part. Minus the evil part.
I don't know. It
All the
does
things
kind of
that
talk.
fascinate
It sounds
you.
like I'm describing my Substack in a way. I'm like, oh man, I fit in a genre. Who knew?
I wish I had a sexy genre like that. I don't even know. I just always say
All right.
literary fiction for my novel, but I don't know. Women's fiction.
Well, where does your book live on the shelf?
I think it would be just be in the general fiction section.
Who are your comps? Tell me about your comps.
God, can we not do this right now? So this is I can
Not
tell
do
you
this
who
episode.
your I can tell you who your comps are. I mean, so that is a great question. And when I was querying Unforgettable, which is my new adult speculative fiction novel, they ask you, so when you're querying, typically you will include in the description of your novel other things to triangulate for the agent what your book is about. So when I was describing that novel, I didn't use other books, but I said it's like Black Mirror meets TikTok. And the example that you sent over, Kelton sent me this query tracker letter that was like rage bait. Why are you sending this to me? I hate this. About this woman who got like contacted the day that she sent the query in and then got 3 offers of people who wanted it right away. And I was like, I hate this woman. No, I'm very happy for her. I'm just jealous. But the way that she described her book, and now people can go look it up, she used a hashtag. It's a hashtag own voices, sapphic romance, and disability representation. The Vicious Ballerinas in I Feed Her to the Beast and The Beast in Me by Jameson Shea meets the haunted halls and buried secrets of It Will Only Hurt for a Moment by Delilah S. Dawson. So she used, I've never heard of those books, but I'm sure the agents who read her query had heard of them. She used those examples. Now, that's in her query letter. When you're writing or filling out Query Tracker, there is typically, not every agent has it, but a space where they will ask you, what are your comps? And I didn't know this until I took my sci-fi class at Harvard, that they want comps that have been published in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you
unfortunately, I did know that. I
tell
did know
me?
that.
Thanks. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
because it's easy for me to see what my book is like Lost Horizon meets Brigadoon. And those were both written in like the 1920s. I'm like, oh, about 100 years too late. But I do think this is a testament to why you've got to be reading in your genre and perhaps to know the genre you're writing in so you can start reading in it. I don't know that I've ever read a book that someone would call American Gothic. I have read, so the other genres I felt aligned with were horror fiction, mystery, dark fantasy, and I have read magical realism, absolutely. I've read a bunch of books in all of those. And so I think that I'm just missing one genre to follow up with. But it's tough because like the books in my mind that are comps now, by the time I am querying this book, will be too old.
Yeah. So that was the question, right? And I want to ask you about reading in your genre separately because some people won't do it. And we could talk about that. But there is this pressure for writers to understand the marketability and the saleability of the book that they are writing and where it exists. And if an agent's going to take it, they're going to take it because they think that they can sell it and make money off of it, right? And that's not why we write. I mean, that's not why we think about our ideas. I don't frame my stories in where it's going to sit on the shelf and how much I'm going to make out of it, right?
Yeah.
But the agents look at it that way. So if I'm to go out and go to Barnes and Noble and do my research and say like, wow, there's a lot of gargoyle fantasy or like romance right now. I'm going to write a gargoyle romance novel, which I've read a couple. They're fantastic.
Hard as a rock.
Stop. Monster romance is a great area of reading. I love that trope. But then here I'm going to like go home and I'm going to sit down in front of my computer and I'm going to spend 2 years crafting my gargoyle romance novel. And then I'm going to send it out to agents. They're going to be like, gargoyle romance was so 2025. Like we've moved on to statue smut. I don't know, which I guess is the same thing. But it's like you run the risk of that, right? Of your book becoming dated from a moment in time. And I'm sure there's some formula out there that tells us how long a trend lives before it dies out and something new comes in. So how does a writer navigate that? My instinct is just not to pay attention at all because it's so out of my control.
Yeah, I think that's true. I'm thinking about it in terms of like interior design. It's like the first moment that you started seeing wavy mirrors. If you were like, I have a wavy mirror idea, it's like that, then that's when to write it. But if you are now in 2025, the year of ubiquitous wavy mirrors, and you're just coming up with the idea, by the time, unless you're going to write that book in like 6 months, it's like, I don't know, man, wavy mirrors they're dated. They're like a thing with a timestamp. They're not a classic design trend, and they are going to stand out as a moment in time, and they're not going to be marketable. But there are things that are marketable forever. And so, yes, I'm sure an editor has a way of being like, oh, let's make it like a little like this so it fits in the current market. But there's things that stand the test of time. And, maybe it's not gargoyles. But I think to your point, it's like you kind of have to write the book you want to write. There are definitely people who can write to the market. And like, wow, kudos to you. That's wild. But I am not one of them. But, I think that if you're writing like kind of what you feel is often a reflection of the culture going on around you. Music is such a good example of this. Music really amplifies the cultural moment, or at least it has. I've been struggling to find music that's kept catching the cultural moment right now, but it makes a bigger mark. But, then it's like, are you going to get paid? Maybe, maybe not. But that's sort of the story of publishing, right? It's like right now, if you wanted to write about fairies and lords, if you have a bangerang idea and you can bang it out, then maybe. Or you could write a book and have it not be on trend and then have someone steal it and sell it a decade later when it is on trend. Not that I know anything about this. Krisserin sent me a reel this morning from New York Mag, I believe, talking about a court case involving some IP. And I think that this is really interesting. Would you tell the listeners what is happening?
Okay, so at the outset, I wasn't super sure what this was about. And it sounded like every writer's worst nightmare, right? I'm always a believer in no one can write the book that you have in your spirit but you. Even if it's the same idea, like let them try. It's not first out of the gate, it's best out of the gate. That's always been my belief. But that changes a little bit when you've been querying an agent and working with them on your novel, and then they whole cloth steal your idea and give it to another writer and then publish that book and it becomes a best-selling series. If I'm talking about Lynne Freeman and Tracey Wolff and Tracey Wolff's agent, Emily Sylvan Kim from Prospect Agency. So I used AI to read the actual lawsuit because I was like, first of all, I don't have a subscription to New York Magazine, so like I can't read this, paywalled article. But I was like, let's just go to the source and get the lawsuit. And by the way, the lawyer that wrote it, she was big bad because when you read the descriptive language, that lawyer should write a book. It was really well done, like the betrayal and this, that, the other thing. I was like, go off anyway. So the key allegations, I'm just going to read them out because I did not go to law school. Freeman, who is also an attorney and a writer, claims she entrusted her manuscript to agent Emily Sylvan Kim, who allegedly defrauded her by requesting numerous revisions and additional materials over 3 years, 45 plus versions of the manuscript. Freeman alleges that Kim shared these materials with her longtime client and friend Tracey Wolff, who then used them to create the best-selling Crave series. Here are the similarities between the two novels, and this is very damning. Because it's like, if you're going to steal an idea, be a little bit more clever with your theft, right?
Yeah.
Both feature a young adult paranormal romance set in an Alaskan high school. Both protagonists moved from San Diego after losing their family in a tragic accident. Both follow teenage girls who discover they aren't human and must navigate a supernatural world while falling for a dangerous boy. Both are set against the backdrop of a supernatural war between factions. Both feature a feminist perspective with a uniquely powerful heroine destined to restore balance, which is very, like, that's
Yeah, I mean,
why, that's
aren't we all?
Yeah. 7 characters' names appear in both works, including unusual ones like the bloodletter Maurice, and I guess Colin is kind of a common name. So in response, they claim that their CEO created the basic storyline and selected Wolff for her writing voice, not based on an existing manuscript. It all sounds fucking fishy to me.
Ooh, I did see some of like the line items comparing, like in one book, the bad boy smells like citrus and waterfalls, and in the other book, he smells like oranges and water.
Oh, okay,
It's like he smells like water.
what does water smell like?
That boy smells wet.
It smells wet.
It's interesting because, as we were just talking about, like, what if you want to write about fairies? Like, everyone wants to read about royal kingdom fairies. And it's like, there's only so many high courts and magical powers that you can have before stuff starts feeling really familiar. And this case in particular, I think will be interesting to watch the outcome. I would also be deeply curious to see, like, how the book was written. Like, I would love if the first manuscript was just run through AI and it was like, lightly edit this. You know, because then we have like way bigger problems to factor into this lawsuit in particular that go beyond just these personal relationships. But it's, I don't know, it's tough. I thought about this a little bit when I put my synopsis on a reel. You know, it's like a really silly thought for a writer as small as I am to be like, what if someone takes it? How do I make it generic enough that no one's going to steal it? And, you know, it's a really scared position to be writing from. This is obviously a wild story, and that's why it's headline news, because this is relatively uncommon as far as I know. But it's crazy to think about.
Oh, well, and talking about AI, now we have all of these authors' books who have been co-opted and put into machine learning algorithms, and all of these unique voices who have spent years of their lives crafting their stories are now just like ripped away and used so that some robot can write a story. It just feels like, I mean, I'm a big believer in art being able to survive, period. But it is scary. And I think that you get into these murky waters when you are trying to write to market, when you're like, okay, this trope is successful. Here's a, you know, I want to write a story about a fairy and a kingdom and this, that, and the other. And also, by the way, like, I've read a bunch of fairy books. I read Holly Black's books, which I thought were excellent. And then, you know, you get into a mode where you're like, okay, I finished ACOTAR. Like, I want to read other things like ACOTAR, and let me find other things. And then after a while, you're like, it's all kind of the same shit, you know? And so I think that is the danger when you're trying to write to market and you're not focusing on the stories that, you know, are interesting to you, that are different, that might be not what's hot at the moment, but potentially could be what's hot next.
Yeah, maybe you're the trendsetter.
Ideally, you're the trendsetter, right?
What a dream.
So we talked about reading in genre. I spoke to a writer this week, and she writes young adult fantasy. And I asked, what are you reading right now? And she said, oh, I don't read in my genre while I'm writing. And I used to be that way too. And still to some extent there, like I will read a book and the voice will be so strong that I will write a little bit in it. But we mentioned this before, kind of like trying to walk a funny way and eventually you just find your gait. But I don't want to read books like my book. I want to read fantasy novels. We talked about this, reading books that would make you a better writer. But then it's also like understanding your book in the universe in which you're trying to enter, and you know, learning from the things that other people have done. And I do wonder if I'm doing myself a disservice by not reading more multi-generational family drama, you know?
I don't know. The one of the things I have been doing lately is looking for elements of my story and seeing how other authors approach them across genre. So there's magic in my book, and so I am reading right now Alex Harrow's The Once and Future Witches, and my book is going to be nothing like that. They're very different genres. Hers is like alternate history, fantasy, witchcraft centered, and that's mine is not that. But there is like a curse witch element to my book, and so I was like, okay, I want to read about how other people are writing about witchcraft and how they're incorporating it into the stories, and like when something supernatural happens, how do the characters perceive it? And so I'm reading across genre to find those things. I mentioned to you that one of my characters has hallucinations, and so I'm reading a number of books that include those to see their approach, just because I think it's really interesting. I mean, I do think, knowing that it sounds like my book is sort of American Gothic, that I should read a couple. Only because if I am so graced to get to the point where I can query this book and I am looking for comps, I want to know if I really consider my book American Gothic. Like, yeah, when I look up what it says it is online, yeah, it sounds aligned. But I wonder if I read one of those books, if I'd be like, mine doesn't feel like this at all. Maybe at the final reading, mine really feels like a speculative or magical realism instead, and I would lead with that. So I think it's important to read a little bit in the genre you're going for and just make sure that you're aligned.
But maybe the thing to do is to do that after you've finished your book, right? Like maybe going into
That's
Barnes
fair.
and Noble after you finished your book and saying, okay, I'm going to write this query now. Let me read, like see where it would be on the shelf or where I think it would be, and read some books in those genres, and then you can say yes or no, and figuring out, by the way, which of them are selling really well and reading those first, you know, and trying to find comps that make the book feel marketable. But then you might surprise yourself and say, like, actually,
Yeah.
no, my book belongs in this section of the bookstore instead.
That's really smart. I mean, you could even go into your local library and find a librarian and just be like, I'm looking for, you don't have to tell them you wrote a book, but you could be like, I'm looking for books that came out in the last 1 to 2 years that do these sorts of things. Could you make me a suggestion? And start from there and power read while you're taking a breather from your book, which you do need to do.
Or you could ask TikTok, Book Talk. Hey, Book Talk girlies, I'm looking for
Oh, yeah.
this, and you'll get like 1,000 responses, and they'll all be the same. Look, but then that's good to know. That's great. I think that that's a great
That's good to
way
know.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think I have seen a few query letters that also use movies and TV shows as comps. I don't know that that is a favored method right now, but I have seen people who say they got an agent doing it, which is an interesting approach.
Yeah.
And like you said, using Black Mirror meets TikTok, I think that is an incredibly apt description of what your book is.
Thanks. Someone come publish it. One thing that I have decided, and I know we're going to talk about querying at a later date in a different episode, but I'm gonna try and get some agent feedback on the query letter and get help with the query letter. There are classes on how to write a query, and there are agents
Bet
that
there
you
are.
can't. Oh, of course there are. There's one at UCLA Extension, and I think
Amazing.
I saw one somewhere. Anyhow, and you can, like at EWP, you could, book time with an agent to go over your query. So there are resources out there, and I just like did it on my own. I'm not doing it this next time. So I do think that having someone help you do it, it's just like, why do things on your own if you can have help? But I wonder, and maybe we can, if there's an agent listening, that'd be nice. If there's an agent listening or someone who knows an agent, or I have a couple friendly agents that I can ask this question to. So maybe I will do that. And then I'll follow up if I have the courage to do it. I'll ask them how they consider this and like how important this is to them when they're regarding a book, and I'll get back to everybody.
I love that.
Well, this was a fun discussion, and I think that we both have to manifest. I feel like you and I are both like, someday, no, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Why else are we here doing this?
Totally.
And now I have we should talk about goals. I have a second draft of my book, and I don't know what to do. What are your goals this week, Kelton? I would love to hear what you're hoping for yourself.
I am anticipating another relatively light load. And so it's more just like words, like especially now that I'm deleting stuff and I'm looking at my overall word count and being like, oh no, it's getting smaller. But I feel like I have momentum at the beginning of the story. Like so far, everything I wrote this week was linear. There were like a couple like flashbacks included in there just like for character fleshing out, but I'm moving closer and closer to where I'm going in the story, and that's fun. It's fun to see how she gets there. So I'm just going to keep putting time in. I really liked front loading all my work, and so I'm going to try and keep doing that. I have all of Saturday, tomorrow, to write the novel. Normally that's my newsletter writing day, but the newsletter just like poured out of me yesterday. So that I got that done in 45 minutes or something. So hopefully it doesn't suck. But yeah, Saturday, tomorrow is a newsletter writing day, and it's going to be novel writing day instead. So it's all about numbers this week for me, and I'm going to go big. We're going to go 3,000 again.
I think you can do it. I know you can do it.
I think I can do it.
I know you can do it. You keep saying that you watch your word count. Like, do you have a overall word count goal?
Yeah, I do.
Which is
not, I'm not married to it. It's just like, it's 80,000 words, because to me, like it's a book. It's like a book length. And I do kind of need a ticker at the top, because otherwise I'm like, well, I'm doing it. And it's like, no, you got a lot more work to do. Like, you got to keep going. I know that you and I approach motivation very differently, but I love to see that big number at the top and as a motivator to like keep me going. I also have the day count going. So it's like, you hit 1,000 words and I'm like, okay, cool. I did something I'm proud of today. So that's really nice, and that resets every day. But it's the big number is also something I'm watching, because it's, right now, I think after all of my editing, I'm down to 17,000 words. I cut a lot, and that now it feels like I'm less than a quarter of the way. But at least the way it's no longer like me cutting through branches. Like the way behind me right now is paved. And so I'm like, okay, good enough. I can be satisfied moving forward knowing that I have cleared a path behind me.
Is this the first fiction novel that you've written?
Well, I've tried writing fiction novels before, and they always got to about 10,000 words. So I have moved past my original mark. But yeah, this is the most promising one. So I'm just gonna keep going and stay hopeful. It's very hard for me to work on a project that has such a future goal. I'm used to micro goals. This is hard for me.
Well, I'll help you.
You do every week. Every week I'm like, I got to show up for Krisserin.
That's right. Well, you help me too. So tell me what I should do next. Give me my goal for the week, because I don't know what to do. I woke up this morning and I finished editing the last chapter, and I went, okay.
I think you need an alpha reader.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, why not? Why not? Get somebody, it could even just be your mom.
I have to read my mom's book first. She sent me her book.
Okay, fair.
I've been working on my book for so long, so I need to read her book that she sent me.
I think Second draft is edited. Get someone you like and trust, or a total fucking stranger. You know? What? Look, I know that sounds like a nightmare to you, but honestly, just have somebody read the book.
Yeah. Maybe I should read
What
it
else?
one more
Listen,
time. Just one more time.
no, why? Just have somebody read it. It's been edited twice. If you've been working on it for like a decade.
It's been edited once. It's been edited once.
Listen, it's been edited a bunch, okay? It's time to let someone sink their claws into it. I'm not saying beta readers, okay? I'm saying one alpha reader.
Yeah. Mom, if you're listening, I'm sending you my book. She's definitely listening. She listens and she watches. By the way, for everyone who is listening, we put all of the episodes on YouTube. So if you want to look at us or while we're talking about this stuff, it's there. Our videos get like 1 view a week, and it's definitely my mother watching them. I just love looking at your beautiful faces.
Love her so much.
I know, she's the best.
Yeah, have someone read it.
All right. But then what am I going to do? That gives me nothing to do.
Take care of yourself. Go to the spa. Like, get a massage. Have a beach day. I don't know. You accomplished something enormous. Be nice to yourself.
I'm very nice.
How am I the one telling you to be nice to yourself? You did something amazing. If I finished a draft of my book, you would be like, Kelton, it's time. You're taking a night at the hotel away from the baby. You're getting room service. You would tell me to treat the shit out of myself. And so that is what I think you should do. Let someone else do a little of the work right now. Do something really nice for yourself. And if you're like, you know, it would be so good, like a little bit of torture, try writing the query letter for the book.
I'm not doing that.
Well, then don't ask me. Okay, well, obviously we love to hear from you, and we'll shout you out if you ask us questions. So where can the people ask us those questions?
So you can email us at officialpenpalspod@gmail.com. You can DM us at penpalspod on TikTok or Instagram. And yeah, we would love to hear from you guys. It is such a pleasure every time an email comes into the official Pen Pals Gmail account, and it's not some advertisement for the software that we use to edit this podcast. I get like we have a new email. Oh, it's just a like Buzzsprout ad email. So please email us, even if it's just to say hi. It doesn't have to be anything deep or thick, but we would love to hear from everybody. So shoot us a line.
But it could be thick. Penelope Douglas is writing to us right now. Remember to tell your friends to subscribe. That is the only way that podcasts are successful, is when people like them, tell other people to like them. So thank you to the people who have done that. We appreciate you.
Yeah, tell your friends about the podcast, and then tell them that you want them to be your accountability buddy, because it really does help.
It works.
It works. Happy writing.
Happy writing.